one of the number one things that is so important to me is my daughter understanding that she needs to listen to her body.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to No Place Like Home. I am Larissa and I'm here with Jess. And we are fortunate to again have Dr Renee White with us. We are talking this episode about self-care, but the science behind it.
It's a contentious topic, self-care.
It's very, I see people polarize over this so much. And it's either, you know, I'm all in and I've got my list and I'm doing it, but all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is like, it's complete BS and how do I have time and I don't have any money and like.
Well, I think the
that's it.
commodification of self-care is what leads people to feel that way about it, right?
Yeah.
Because, anyway, let's talk about it. In our last episode with you, we spoke about oxytocin and how important it is. So ideally, self-care practices are going to help us produce oxytocin. But there's also more to it than that. It's like looking after yourself. Like the baseline, having a drink of water is self-care.
Yeah.
Remembering to take your vitamins is self-care.
Yeah.
Going to the gym is self-care.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And people think they don't have time for that, but especially if you're a mum or a parent. But what I always try and remind people is the more resourced you are, the better parent you're going to be. So you've got to find the time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You might want to speak to us a bit about the science of that, or, I mean, whatever you want to talk about, really.
Well, you know that I'm all about data. And I think there was a really interesting study actually here in Victoria, and they were monitoring mums in the first 6 months postpartum, and it was all around self-care, taking time for yourself. And, you know, whilst the study included things like going to the shops and doing grocery shopping by yourself as part of a self-care act, which I'm just going to be a big babao. But if that is all you can get, then grab it by the reins and go for it. Yeah. If you're throwing on a podcast or your favourite music while you're grabbing the Weet-Bix off the shelf, you know, all power to you. But what they showed was that the mums who took at least 30 minutes per week, so not all at the same time, but 30 minutes per week, had 3 times less likely to develop postnatal depressive symptoms.
Only 30 minutes per
Only
week.
30 minutes.
And
that's
not
how
in a
deprived
block.
we are, Jess.
Yeah.
The bar is so low that all we need is
That
30
really
minutes.
is low.
Isn't it?
Over a week.
Over a week.
Yeah,
Over a
that's
week.
not great.
So, but like when I read it, I was actually quite shocked because I was thinking to myself, you know, if someone told you that you could take a pill and it would reduce, you know, your likelihood of developing postnatal depressive symptoms times 3, how many people would be jumping at that? Right?
Yeah.
But we come full circle back to self-care, having the time, having the resources to be able to do it. It's bloody hard because first of all, you've got to get yourself out of like, you know, that whole mum bubble thing and finding time and, you know, resources for it. But it's so, so important for us. And I think it comes back to, you know, I was talking previously about just your self-identity, you know, creating time and space for yourself. You start to kind of get that back for you.
Why is it so hard for people to carve out time?
I personally think that it's difficult because we don't know how to ask for help. I think that is the number one thing.
I agree.
Do you think there's also this, and this is definitely not all families, but do you think there's also that thing where the non-birth parent doesn't get enough time off work to be able to know how to really be alone with the child, the baby or the child, and we find that families find themselves in a situation where the mum or the birthing parent doesn't feel like they can leave the other parent alone with the child or the children and go and do their thing, because they know either how stressed their partner's going to be or how stressed they're going to be worrying that the partner's not doing enough.
Yeah.
I've seen that as an issue in a lot of families.
That was my situation. And that was, I think there's
That's
two sides.
fascinating because Grayson is so like on it with everything.
Absolutely. But I think, you know, it's two sides of the same coin for me. It was that I was, you know, the primary caregiver, exclusively breastfed child, wouldn't take a bottle. And so a lot of the nutrition and soothing was down to me, right? And so there was just kind of, Eva was always with me.
Yeah.
And so when the balance kind of started to tip and weaning and all of that kind of stuff, it's not to say that she didn't have a bond with him. It's just that I was the default parent, right? And he was working so we could have a life and all of that type of stuff. But I think the other side of the coin is my personality, which is
control.
I set the bar way too high.
Yeah.
And so what I had to learn to do is communicate my expectations. And if those expectations did not mesh with his expectations or the level to which I constantly have this high bar to, it's also the acceptance on my part that just because he does something differently doesn't mean it's not right. And I can tell you right now, to get to that point was a lot of therapy and a lot of dollars.
Yeah.
But, you know,
I hear you on that.
It's so
though.
hard. Yeah. And for me as well, to ask for help is
Yes.
very difficult for me. And I tell clients that. I was like, I am the mayor of Struggle Town when it comes to that. So don't feel that you're the only person who is struggling. Yeah.
And then there's the guilt too, right? People feel guilty.
Don't start me with the guilt. Oofed.
Yeah.
What is it that changes physically when we do those acts of self-care?
Yeah. So I guess if we're talking early postpartum days, and you've just said, drinking water, basic self-care, you know, the physicality around pregnancy,
Huge.
birth, postpartum, you know, the majority of us are walking into postpartum depleted of, you know, at least one micronutrient. So self-care is, you know, making time for yourself to actually rest. That is number one. Refueling our body, making sure that we're turning to really nutritious food and things like that. They're just basics, but they really are acts of self-care for ourselves. And, you know, we get that beautiful recovery afterwards, and God damn, do we need it. I mean, we look at people who have knee reconstruction surgery and they're in hospital for 2 weeks and they've got a full rehab program and lots of experts around them. And
My mum had it all with her knee replacement.
yeah, but
she had better care than
baffles
I
me.
had postpartum after having a baby.
It's so crazy, but yeah, it's about prioritizing yourself because your physical body just really needs to rest after it.
But we just don't do it. We almost are the complete opposite, and we've talked about this trophy culture before, whereby if we're up and at them and at the hair salon the week later, or you know, we're just doing things around the house. That's actually what we're doing.
Exactly.
We're not doing I'm going to come home and is the bed ready and I'm going to get in bed and this is where I'm going to be for even a week or, you know, a couple of days. We're doing the complete opposite.
Yeah.
There's that whole, anecdotally, the whole thing with family members coming over and you running around making cups of tea for them, or your boobs are leaking and your baby wants milk, and
and they just want to hold the baby.
Yeah, it's just such a classic.
I just don't know how did that happen?
I think that's another episode, Larissa.
I know, I agree with you. But that, you know, to come back to the self-care part of it.
It's very difficult. I mean, we spoke in the previous episode about oxytocin. So, you know, we look at the physicality, the mental emotional side of it as well. Like if you are not looking after yourself, if you're running yourself ragged, being the entertainer, the host, cooking, stuff for visitors and things like that, you are activating your sympathetic nervous system. You're in fight and flight mode.
Yeah.
You're going to heighten your anxiety. And we know that system is not like, you can't have that and the parasympathetic nervous system firing at the same time. So you're going to have to let go of that, hit up the oxytocin. That's where all the good stuff's happening, and you need to lean into that. And that's only going to come with rest and having people around you who are supportive of that as well, right?
Who are massaging your feet while you drink a tea in bed.
Absolutely. Yeah, while you're side lying with your baby. It's like you're getting like just triple oxytocin hit all at the same time. Like that's what we should be doing.
Yeah. Can we also talk about how important it is? I mean, I'm sure you've got data on this, but self-care and being active in caring for yourself and what we're modeling to our children by doing this.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it goes without saying. I don't know. Like I talk about this all the time. It just seems so logical to me.
I know, and that's why I think, I go back to that. How did we end up getting there with this trophy culture? Like it seems so logical. If we went to hospital for any other reason, we would come home and have the expectation to get into bed.
Exactly.
But we go and have children
and
then come home forward and think we need to be doing all the things.
Yeah.
So
That's bizarre.
It is really bizarre. Like I cut my leg open, was in hospital for a few hours, and the first thing was like, okay, Riss, just sit on the couch, lay down,
Netflix.
It was
bang.
all of that.
Yeah.
But then when I came home with children, I was like, okay, I'll just pop some washing on and I'll just
back to normal. Yeah, I don't know. But I think again it is about modeling to our children and it starts very early on. It's about respecting yourself.
Yeah.
And then they go, "Oh, okay." Like you normalize that type of activity. And it even goes to and I know this is a contentious issue with, solid food with children and just, quote unquote, picky eaters for children and things like that. One of the number one things that is so important to me is my daughter understanding that she needs to listen to her body. Yeah. We've had conversations about listening to our body since she could utter words because I think
so important.
Yeah, they come out of our bodies and they are hardwired to survive and to thrive. And it is society that squashes that out of them. And so the more that we can, I guess, nurture that within them, the better. So we have conversations around the fact that, if she's full at the dinner table, even though I know I sit there and go, God,
you're going to ask for a sandwich in half an hour.
Like, have you eaten a corner of that sandwich? Like, are you joking me? And I'm just like,
yeah,
and like sometimes we do have a screaming match about it. I'm not a perfect parent by any means.
Who is?
But the majority of the time, I literally have to just go, okay.
You're listening to your body.
Because I need her to know that I respect her as a human being fundamentally. And I'll give you it is a bit of a digression, but she went to school and started in kinder last year. And in Tassie, you're actually part of the school program. So you get the uniform. It's just another class, right?
Oh.
And so she had a lunchbox and she was telling me how at the end of lunch, she has to go and show her lunchbox to the teacher before she can go and play. And I was furious. I was so cross.
I would have been too.
Because she was saying to me how, oh, Mum, well, I just wasn't hungry and I ate half of my sandwich, but, I just wasn't hungry anymore. And we kind of always had this deal where it was like, whatever you don't eat in your lunchbox, you bring it home and you finish it off later on and blah, 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 blah. I was so cross and I made a beeline to the teacher and I just said, not on.
Yeah.
It's not happening. I don't care what your rules are, but it is not happening because if she says to you she's not hungry, she's not hungry. I know her well enough where she's not going to turn around and go, oh, well, can I have like, half a block of chocolate instead? Like, we talk about this is sometimes food, this is not sometimes food, stuff like that. So it comes back to respecting yourself as a human being and then making sure that that is the same message that you're giving your children as well.
Yeah.
And then what about coming back to self-care practices, the financial barriers?
Yeah.
There is so much that we can do that's free.
Yes, absolutely.
Again, water.
Yeah.
Like, we're so lucky that we have access to, I think about it every single time I wash my face, how lucky we are to have water. We can get a glass of water out of the tap whenever we want to.
Yeah.
We can go for a walk whenever we want to.
Yeah.
What are some other good free self-care practices? Go to the library.
Go to the library. I mean, there are a ton of free apps that I love. So Insight Timer is my favorite go-to.
Sarah Blunden.
Oh my goodness. It's like tens of thousands of people
So many.
at your disposal. And like, I'm definitely one of the type of people who I'm like, ugh, I can't listen to you. Like, I struggle with audiobooks. I've had amazing books that I've read, and then I've flicked over to an audiobook to kind of, whilst I'm cooking or something like that. And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot listen to this. Like, the person's voice.
Yeah.
So Insight Time is amazing because you find someone you love and you stick with it and you save them and, send them some coins.
Yes.
Which I love.
Yes, I do.
Listening to music. Like, I just...
Oh, what is actually, like, there is, for me personally, nothing better than being either home alone or with my kids and husband, either or, but loud music, like so loud that I'm a bit worried about the neighbours. And just like having a dance like no one's watching moment. Like, there is nothing better to get me out of a funk than that. And even when I'm not in a funk, it's just like cleaning the house, dancing around like an absolute maniac, wearing my runners and my leggings because, it's so much fun.
There is science behind that. I was talking to a psychologist, Dr. Rebecca Ray, about it, and she was talking about the fact that when you see animals in nature, so for example, a deer, right, and they sense that like they're being hunted, and then when they go to get away, they don't just saunter off. They're like bounding and like shaking and like they like, you've seen those Instagram
somatic
things.
movement.
It's just this crazy erratic movement. So they're getting rid of that kind of negative energy through movement. And there are so many people, because I know we're Melbourne gals who, went through COVID lockdown. There are so many families that I know, and we did it, dance-offs in the morning.
Huge dance-offs.
Just this is how we're going to set the tone.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing. Like, my daughter's favourite singer is Florence and the Machine. I have pushed it onto her. But we danced to Florence and we sang to Florence, and that was our vibe. That's how we got through. 100%.
I hear you.
My boys
on
are
that.
really into Dog Days Are Over after it played on the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and to the point where
God, that made me cry.
Same. But how fun is that scene at the end? We dance like Drax all the time now, like this around the house.
So cute. Valentina's dancing to that song in her dance concert next week. Yeah. So that's often in our car because she sits there marking out the dance while we're listening to it. But yeah, being a former dancer, like for me and like my anxiety, movement was always something that would release.
Yeah.
And so is there a difference between just a dance party at home and actual exercise? As in, I mean, you can get exercise from having a dance party at home, but like going to a HIIT class or going to a yoga class or going for a run or going for a walk. Like intentional exercise versus incidental exercise, I guess.
I personally don't know, but like just from like a logical perspective, like it's whatever you're vibing with, right?
Yeah.
Like there are some
Whatever
people
feels
out
good.
there who hate cardio.
Yeah.
Like me. But
love
if
to
you,
dance.
I love to dance,
Yeah.
but if you get me in and I'm squatting weights, I'm all over that.
Yeah.
Like that gets me really going.
I like
okay?
doing anything in time with music. So like Pilates and the little cardio bursts at the end and time with music. It's like the rush I get from that. There's
it's
nothing
that
like it.
hit of oxytocin, endorphins, dopamine. It's this beautiful cocktail that we're getting. But again, it's dependent on the person, right? Because some people are going to be like, there's no way in hell you're getting me into that Pilates room.
I found out that my husband doesn't get the same reaction. He came to Pilates with me a few times and he's like, no, I don't feel that. And I'm like, are you mad? What's wrong? So, dependent on the person.
Yeah.
I just think, exercise is so important and so underrated.
Yes, I think so. Because you're either doing it by yourself or you're doing it in a group. So, it might be like a group playing netball or something like that. There's that social interaction as well where your mind is, without sounding horrible, not on your children. Like it's for you.
Yeah.
You are looking after yourself and investing in yourself.
We also, funny that you say investing in yourself, because I have a group of friends and we all talk about exercising for our future selves. So sometimes it's really hard to be motivated, right? Especially through winter. But what I always come back to is I want to be able to, I love sitting on the floor and I want to be able to sit on the floor when I'm 80. I don't want my body to get to a point where, and I can still lift my kids. They're 5 and nearly 8 and I can still lift them up and carry them around. And I want to stay strong. I want to be strong. My mum can't lift my youngest into the shopping trolley. She can't even pick him up and carry him around. I don't want to get to that point. I want to stay strong. And also, building muscle is good for our bones and, osteoporosis when we're older. So sometimes when I'm not feeling motivated to exercise now and today and this week, I just think about future Jess and grandma Jess.
Yeah.
And
that's
who I want to be.
Yeah.
And that's sort of really motivating.
Absolutely.
That's really good. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think exercise is one of those really unique things where you don't see the benefit of it straight away. And particularly in our society at the moment where we've got 30-second reels and we're expecting like that instant like result and dopamine hit. Yeah. And so exercise is literally something you're going to have to invest in to see the results later down on the track where you're 80 and you're pulling yourself comfortably off the floor.
You might get the hit of whatever I get when I do my Pilates. But the physical benefits, I guess, take a bit longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I suppose as, a common thing that we hear is as parents, everyone's busy. Oh, we just don't have time. I just don't have time to do that. Or, well, obviously we've talked a lot around, why it's so important, what it releases and, but is it, how do people actually convert that way of thinking into
tangible outcomes?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, first of all, it's really hard and it kind of goes back to, being comfortable with asking for help because let's be honest, if you are a parent and let's say you've got a 3-year-old, they're not off at school 5 days a week. So you're going to have to do something with your child. So if you're the primary kind of caregiver, you're the default parent. And so I think one of the pieces of advice that I always give mums is the first thing is that you need to communicate. You need to communicate with someone who you trust. And it doesn't necessarily mean that this is the person who you're going to hand your child over to. It could be your partner and go, I'm really just not vibing at the moment and I need to take time for myself. And you need to have that really open and honest conversation with them about where you're at and they need to be on board. And together you can work out a plan about what is actually going to happen to create time and space for you individually. And again, like I see this all the time when we do our postpartum planning sessions with families, it's not just about the primary parent, it's also about the 2 people that made this child. Like where is that closeness and that time for you as a couple without your child, remembering that you had a relationship before this, before you were parents, you're still those individuals. So I think the first thing is communicating and then, planning is really important. Like, we know from the research that if you plan it, like a haircut or, you know, going to the doctors or whatever it is, if you plan it, if you write it down, you put it out into the ether, it happens.
That's why for me, I have to book in to a class.
Absolutely.
I know this conversation has become very exercise heavy. Obviously, there's so many forms of self-care that aren't exercise. But when we're talking about exercise, booking in a class, and especially if I'll get a fine if I do a no-show.
Oh, I do like that.
It really
That's
it works for me.
Yeah.
And for my family.
Threatening behavior.
And, you know, the children don't always like it when I leave in the morning, but I just say to them, you know, I'm a better mama when I exercise.
Yeah.
And they know that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other key thing about the communication is being really specific with your needs, not just, oh God, I just need time for myself. Like for partners, that's debilitating in some regards because they're like, I want to help you, but I just don't know what to do. And so
that's a really great point.
Yeah.
I want to go and watch a movie by myself, or I want to go and read a book in the sun for half an hour with 0 interruptions.
Yep.
Actually
Absolutely.
giving an explicit, this is what I want
I think,
or need.
and I might be generalizing, but I think particularly for males, like I've had this conversation with my husband and he's always on board with like, of course I will help you. Of course we'll make time. Of course. But you need to tell me what you want.
Yeah.
You
This
know,
is the thing.
like,
we do expect them to be mind readers. I get
Exactly.
so angry at Andy when he doesn't read my mind.
I know. It's like, why do I have to explain this? It's like, because you have to explain this. Absolutely. I want to go to the movies by myself and eat 3 choc tops and like then go have a martini afterwards. I know how good are choc tops. Boysenberry all the way, yes.
Yeah.
But yes, you need to be really specific with what your expectations are and then how that is actually going to like unfold. Who are you going to invest in to kind of help you with that support if it's not going to be your partner? So, you know, do you need to get a babysitter?
Yeah.
Can you kid swap is always one of my favorite things to do. So if you can't afford a babysitter, call up your best friend. And my friends and I do this all the time. It's like, my God, my child like is driving me up the wall, or I'm solo parenting. I do this all the time. When I'm solo parenting, all my friends know because I'm like, right, who's coming to the park? We're taking a picnic. You know, things are just better when you're together as a village.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
And so reach out to those people and work out exactly what's going to go on. But I think one of the other really important things is that once you get to that point where you've got all those systems in play, you need to make sure that you respect your boundaries and that other people respect them as well. Because we do have instances where, because this is like, for some mums, it's very foreign for other people to see her taking time out for herself. And it's those classic like, where's your child?
Do you know how many times I get asked, who's looking after the kids? If I'm doing anything without them, who's looking after the kids? Even if I'm at the shops, they're with their dad.
The person who shares 50% of their DNA.
Yeah. I had sex with that person. We created a child and that's who they're with, believe it or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that you need to be mindful of, because when you start to push back on societal norms, other people start pushing you because they're not familiar and comfortable.
It's triggering for them.
With the things. Yeah. It's like, oh, well, you know, back in my day, we did it all. And I'm like,
oh, we spoke about,
we have these conversations a lot.
Did you just though?
Yeah.
So I think learning to, you know, hold your ground and respect yourself and make sure that those boundaries are in place, you know, that's going to take you forward. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Renee.
Oh, my pleasure.
This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guest speakers. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and content here should not be taken as medical or professional advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any personal recommendations and medical care. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate based on the best available information at the time of recording, we welcome any comments, suggestions or feedback via our website contact form, home.com.au/contact. Names and details of personal experiences may have been changed to allow for anonymity and privacy. To join the conversation, join us on social media at Home Postpartum.